Mark chapter 14, beginning with verse 32 and going through verse 36 will be our text. Mark 14, verse 32. Then they came to a place which was called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took Peter, James, and John with him, and he began to be troubled and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch." He went a little farther and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away. Take it away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will." And may God bless the reading of his word today as we look at this cup. The husband had just taken his first cup of coffee for the day, and after he drank it, he told his wife, "That has got to be the worst cup of coffee I have ever drank in my entire life. It was so bad that my eyes are even hurting. They're burning like fire. I can't even see out of them. What did you do to that cup of coffee to make it the worst?" Well, his wife looked at the cup and she said, "My dear husband, if you would take the spoon out of the cup before you drank it, it might not be so bad." Do y'all get it? Is this mic on? He left the spoon in, they drank it. Ah, now you get it. Well, we're off to a roaring start here.
I'm going to make you a note here about that one.
Yeah, I won't use that one again, that's for sure. A few of you got it. Most of you didn't, though, but carry on, Brother Mike, carry on. I thought it was pretty good myself, but anyway. The point is, we all have had our worst cup. It may have been coffee, may have been tea, may have been some other liquid beverage. But we've all had our worst cup. Well, Jesus also had his worst cup. And it's the cup he refers to in our text for today. His cup was so horrible and terrible that Jesus fell on the ground and prayed to the Father that he would not have to drink this cup. For you see, folks, this cup did not contain coffee. This cup contained the cross. This cup did not contain tea. This cup contained a tree. This cup did not contain decaf. This cup contained death. We're going to give you some reasons today as to why this cup is the worst cup of all. We start with the fact that this cup contained sadism. Mankind has a long history of treating his fellow man in a sadistic way. You go all the way back to the first family and you find it between two brothers. Man has a way of putting his fellow man through the most barbaric and inhumane forms of physical pain and torment. But the worst example of man's inhumane, sadistic treatment is found in what was done to Jesus at his death. The physical torture and torment inflicted on him before the cross and on the cross is beyond our comprehension and even beyond our imagination. And rest assured, folks, that Jesus felt every lash of that whip. He felt every driving of every nail. He felt every piercing of that crown of thorns and that spear in his side. So when it comes to the sadism of man, no cup holds a cup to the cup that Jesus drank from. And then second of all, this cup contained shame. Jesus Christ drank the shame of first being arrested like he was a dangerous criminal. He then drank the shame of being tried and convicted by both his civil and religious government. He then drank the shame of the people choosing the worst one in the bunch, Barabbas, over him. He then drank the shame of being gawked and stared at as he hung on the cross, buck stark naked. He then drank the shame of having people call him names, make fun of him, and even gamble for the clothes off his back as he died on the cross. So when it came to enduring and experiencing shame, this cup surely runneth over for Jesus Christ. And then thirdly, this cup contained sorrow. Think of the sadness and sorrow that Jesus felt for his mother Mary as she stood there watching her son go through all of this. And then think of the sadness and sorrow he felt for the other women at the cross. And then think of the sadness and sorrow he felt for John as he stood there at the cross. And then think of the sadness and sorrow that Jesus felt for all those people who were crucifying him. For remember, he prayed that they would be forgiven for what they were doing to him. So Jesus praying for these followers of his as they stood there helpless and heartbroken. And Jesus praying for his murderers. Oh yes, this cup was filled to the brim with sorrow and sadness for Christ. And then next of all, the cup contained sin. The sin of who? What? Where? When? Every sin of every person ever committed was found in that one cup. So when Jesus drank that cup, he became sin. When Jesus drank that cup, he became accountable and responsible for all the sin of all mankind. When Jesus drank that cup, all of our sins were transferred to his account and record before God. Imagine, the only one in all of history who never sinned one time is now charged with having committed every sin ever committed throughout all time. So when it comes to a cup of mud, this cup contained all the mud that you and I have ever produced. And then because the cup contained sin, it contained separation. With Jesus now, sin itself in the sight of God, God being perfect, had to turn away from his Son. And now, for the first time in all of time, Jesus the Son is separated from his Father. For the first time in all of time, Jesus sees the back of God. Imagine that. For the first time, he sees God's back as God turns away from him. For the first time in all of time, Jesus has to ask his Father the question, why have you forsaken me? Now, we know all separations between loved ones are hard. They hurt and are painful. But folks, in this cup was the most painful and hurtful separation of all time. Now, after Jesus prayed his prayer, first that the cup be removed, but then that God's will be done and not his, here's what I picture happening. Jesus stood up